Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Wine Time with Peggy show, featuring Peggy Fiandaca, who, along with her winemaker husband Kurt Lawrence Dunham, owns and operates LDV Winery in Arizona. Hey, everybody. Every first Wednesday we get to chat with Peggy Fiandaca. It is Wine Time with Peggy, and we're going to talk about spice. Ooh, one of my favorite topics. Pairing wine with Mexican food. She's got a great recipe to share, and she's going to talk about what's going on in the vineyard at LDV Winery Vineyard outside Chiricahua National Monument in the southeast region of Arizona, so just outside Tucson. It sounds like it's getting to that time when a whole bunch of work happens in the vineyard.
Absolutely, it's harvest time, and we
Really?
act.
Like
Yes,
now,
it
it's
it
happening.
right now, right now. Yep. So yeah, last week we kicked it off. 2024 vintage was harvested with our Viognier. We started with our Viognier, and we harvested 11 tons of grapes, which in our little world, that is the second most tonnage of Viognier that we've ever brought in. So we're thrilled about
Wow.
that. Everything looks beautiful, and so we're off and running. We're gonna beginning of September, we'll start with the reds. I don't know which one we'll pull in first. We're still, every day we check the sugars out in the vineyard to see where they're at and check the pH and everything. So I don't know if it'll be the Grenache or the Syrah that will start next. But
You
yeah, it's
mentioned
exciting
Grenache,
time.
and this month we get to celebrate Grenache like extra. Grenache has its own day, doesn't it?
It does on September 20th, the International Grenache Day, and at
Oh, not just
LDV.
national, excuse me, international Grenache Day.
International. Yeah, I mean it's an international grape and it's loved worldwide. And I think it's like one of the second most widely planted grape in the world. And we love it at LDV and it loves growing at LDV wineries. So we're thrilled
And
about
it
it.
tastes fabulous because it
It
knows.
does.
Comes
Yeah,
from a good home.
it does, and it fits really well with talking about the foods that we're going to talk about, Mexican foods and the spices
Mm.
with it. Grenache is one of the go-to grapes or wines to pair with Mexican foods.
Well, Grenache, can we just touch on this a little bit and we'll get into the food
Yeah,
and the harvest and everything. But Grenache, it's interesting to me because you talk about your rosé and sometimes we forget that rosé is not it's not a grape, right? So
right.
the Grenache is a grape and you can make rosé from Grenache, can't you?
Correct. A rosé is a winemaking style. And yes, it can be made, rosé can be made out of anything or any combination of various wines, but we make rosé out of Grenache and it
Mhm.
just is
It's
yummy.
fabulous.
Yeah,
I'm just
it's
saying,
yummy.
fabulous is the word of the day. I love this.
Yeah,
Well, because we're talking about spice, and I kind of feel like
right.
Grenache and spice go well. Is it just me? I
No, no, no. I think,
mm,
why should you choose Grenache? I think it's because of that hints of spice, that underlying flavor of spiciness that Grenache brings out.
mm,
And Grenache is such a wonderful food-friendly wine. So,
mm,
I mean, anything from tacos all the way to pizza or anything grilled
mm.
coming off the grill, it just
Ooh,
is beautiful. And it's a grape that's grown worldwide, but it's an important grape of southern France, the um, Chateau area. What am I? Chateau Pop. Um, the
Chateau
Pop.
de Pop, de Pop,
There we go. I
de
lost
Pop.
it for a moment.
I
In
no, no. I mean,
southern
come on.
French.
It's like we're just topping countries
Yeah,
here now.
exactly.
No, no.
And so Grenache is an important grape that's grown there.
Mm,
And also, of course, in Spain, Grenache,
mm.
that's the Grenache grape, and it's grown really beautifully there. And of course in Arizona because it loves the altitude and the dry, hot area. So yeah, we're
And it
thrilled
goes like, here I
about
am. I'm
Grenache.
hot. So when you planted
Exactly.
your vineyards originally, when
Yes.
you and Kurt said, "Hey, we're gonna do this. These are the grapes we want to grow." Was it like you had to look at what you personally want to grow and like, and then look at what, the terrain is saying yes or no. Like you can't just always like Pinot Noir. Would you try and do that in Arizona, or does that really just need to stay up in Oregon? And look at, when you look at the terrain and the topography of the land, the weather, all those things that make a terroir. I can't
Or
speak.
what? Yeah.
We need some wine, Peggy, that we have an
Yeah, I know it.
excuse, right? I'm sorry, but I have tea. I've been doing podcasts all day, but
Uh,
how rude. But when you think of like when you guys decided to plant and what you're going to plant, I mean, there had to be like, I really want to grow this, and then you can't, or you
right.
can. So Grenache, where was that in the list of children?
Well, every vintner uh, has a different philosophy, I'm sure, but we love wines that are really a reflection of the place that they're grown. And so
Mm,
we went into it with that in mind. So we wanted to really understand our place that we were going to plant our vineyard. So we studied the soils, we studied the terrain around us, we studied the weather patterns, and before we laid out our vineyard and before we chose the vines. And what that study told us was that Rhone varieties would be the best in our location because we have volcanic soils and the 5,000 foot elevation, and of course,
mm,
the dry area and low water. So we needed to find vines and grape varieties that would fit within that terroir. So that's what we gravitated to Grenache and Viognier, Petit Syrah, and Syrah, thinking that those would be the best for our location. Would I have loved to have some Pinot Noir? Yeah, we love Pinot Noir. We love Zinfandel. We love a good
mm,
Cabernet Sauvignon. But it,
mm.
it just, our place didn't call for that. So
Okay.
granted, they're grown in Arizona. Other people have planted them and are doing well with some of those varieties. But on our location, we want it to be location based, and that's what we
Mm.
lean towards.
And well, that's specific, and it's also microclimates, right? So you can do
Correct.
something around the corner, not necessarily, that's what when I always talk about that when we were in Colorado's grape area in Grand Junction in that region, it was mind blowing to me because we really had this, we did so many tastings and met so many people, and it was completely different each place we went because
Yes.
it had to do where the Colorado River was in location to their winery and mountains. And like we're talking about, that I really have got to this point now. If anyone's anywhere near any kind of volcanic soil, I'm there, man, with the wineries, because I think the wineries that are near volcanic soil just have this amazing extra. I don't know what to say about it other than it's like really good. I'm watching my
Right.
language. I want to say like it is so good. It's
Right.
amazing, you know?
Right. And it is, there is something different about it. And all of our vineyard is in volcanic soils. And actually,
Mm.
Kurt's going to be doing a wine talk on and doing a tasting of
Oh yeah.
wines from various areas that are grown on volcanic soils coming up in October. So I'll
Cool.
probably do a wine tip or a blog on that in the near future because it is distinctive and it adds that layer of flavor to our wines, I think, because of that soil composition that the grapes are grown on. So, yeah, it's an
Yeah.
exciting place. And, talking about, like you did, about how difference a place makes, even if it's a vineyard is in close proximity to the other, but because of the terroir of that place, it could be very different. I mean, we have vineyards 3 miles away from us, same altitude on the mountain, but because our Ash Creek might be that flows through part of our vineyard, it's about 15 feet to 20 feet lower than where our vineyard sits. And that creek brings, coming out of the mountain, brings a different wind flow that
Mm.
comes down that, and the air and the cooling of that air down that creek is very different than our vineyard friends 3 miles away that also have a creek, but it is not lower like ours is. So it is
Mm.
up at vineyard, almost at vineyard level. And so the airflow is not, doesn't sink as much, and it hits their vineyard a little bit more. So they get a little bit more frost than we do because of that. And
Wow.
where the frost kind of misses us, I think because it flows down that creek,
Well,
which
and
is
that's that
short.
that cooling of creeks. I mean, it's a hiker, when you go, you can tell as soon as you get into a
Right,
wash area just by the drop in temperature. And it's like
right,
if you're getting hot on a hike, find the water where it was, even if it's not there, it's still cooler. Even if
right.
it's just completely no water, it doesn't matter. That temperature drops immediately as soon as you step down, which is
Absolutely.
fascinating to me. It is, it's like how does it keep it that way? Just because it's a tunnel? No, I don't know what's going on in there, but it's doing it, you know?
It is fascinating, and that's, that nuances of a place. The winds flow differently, the water flows differently, the air
Mm.
flows differently because of how our vineyard is laid out. And so, yeah, all those came into play when we positioned our vineyard, the way it sits on the land.
Oh, yeah. So did you position which way the grapes grow? Like how you actually
Absolutely,
did the vines, like the behind us, right? In the
absolutely.
picture.
Yep.
You said we're going this way instead of that because of the wind, the
Right. Yep.
breathability. Because I know you don't want your grape clusters to get too sweaty. We
Yeah.
don't want the sweaty grapes. We don't. I know you don't want that, but just going also in the region, I encourage people that to go to Chiricahua National Monument and go up to the grotto up in that area and start seeing the actual the hoodoos, these
Yeah.
amazing geological formations. And then think about, Peggy and Kurt's wine that they make that
Yeah.
comes from the base of this amazing formation and formations, excuse me, because volcanoes did happen. The
Right.
whole Cochise stronghold comes from that. And even just
Right.
plain slabs of rock that you walk on are all part of it. It's like it is incredible when you go to the top and you
Yeah.
see what came out of that. And then you go, I can taste this. Go to Peggy and Kurt's, get some wine,
Yeah.
brownies, bringing
Yeah.
in the
But
brownies, right? But like it is incredible, like to know that
yes.
your wine and you're actually drinking prehistoric history in a weird way. Does that
Right.
sound wonky? I mean,
No, no,
it's
it's
cool.
exactly right. And though we're such a young vineyard, I think, the next 50 years, the wine produced from our grapes will be just incredible.
Mm.
Continue to be incredible. But that mountain behind me is the Chiricahua Mountains, and that was volcanic at one time, and just threw out this incredible plume of granite and volcanic ash that creates our wines, and so
Wow.
it's pretty exciting.
That's
But
the
yeah,
spice. See, I'm gonna get us back on
that's
track. I got into the volcano, but that's the spice added to
the
the wine.
spice.
That's the
Yep,
seasoning, right? Because those
yep,
dust particles are in there, and that's why it's so important to keep your soil pristine because that also adds to the flavor of the wine and to have that integrity. And I know you are both very into sustainability of what happens to the wine and
correct.
even vegan. So
Yep,
yes, and you can have vegan Mexican food. In fact, I was vegan for a few years, and I'll tell you this, you want good food and you're vegan, Mexican food can be your best friend. And so
yep,
let's talk about that too. But two things real quick. Kurt is doing this talk in October. I want people to remember to go to ldvwinery.com because you guys have events. Sign up for the newsletter. I love Peggy's newsletter. Every time she comes out, I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, dang, we need to get back across the country again. She's got all these events going on at the winery. Sometimes you have them at the vineyard in
right.
harvest time, how many people are allowed to come visit unless they're getting out there and picking? It's like a no-no,
Well,
right?
it's a pretty busy time, but we did have two of our wine club members, two gals that came and worked with Kurt for the Viognier harvest and had a ball. They had a ball. They worked hard. It harvest is you can prepare for weeks and weeks ahead of time, but you can't prepare for everything. So we had all the equipment ready. We had the barrels, the tanks, the crush pad. We had extra parts and pieces in case something broke, set aside, ready for it. And then we got up. Now I wasn't there. Kurt got up before dawn, like 4 in the morning, to get out there because our crew was coming. And they got out in the field and started picking the vignette. And Kurt had to get the tractor to go get the first bins of vignette to bring to the crush pad. And we had a flat tire on the tractor. So how do you plan for that? You know, you don't
You get
have,
pliers out like me and bang it 3 times and it'll magically
yeah.
come back.
So, I mean, thank goodness Kurt keeps, he's such a nice guy and he keeps good relationships with all kinds of people. And he was able to get someone out there immediately with a new tire to change that our tractor tire, because you can't leave the grapes once they're
Well, and you
harvested.
won't even let grapes go off the property. You're like, I'm not
Right,
sourcing grapes and trusting it to get from A to B to the winery in
right.
time. So now when it happens on site, that's not fun because you don't want to be
Not
dragging
fun.
thing.
No.
No. Mm-mm.
So, and luckily it was last week, end of August, it was beautiful weather down there, cool. So it was in the 70s and 60s. That's all. And so even though the grapes had to sit in the vineyard for a little while, um, an hour or so before we can get them out to the crush pad, they stayed cool. Because if it's too hot, that's why we start harvesting before dawn, because you don't want the harvested grapes to get too hot because the fermentation process will start and you don't
Oh,
want that to happen. At least
ooh.
we
So
don't. We
they don't
want
want
to,
to be sweaty even when they're harvested. Like
right. No,
keep
we
them
want them
cool,
cooled off.
cool,
Yep.
dark place. Yeah. Oh,
Yep.
wow.
So we were able to bring them in and get them on the crush pad and start that process of destemming and then get them into fermentation process in the winery. By
Wow.
adding the yeast and yeast nutrients and it's basically inoculation of the juice, what we do.
Okay, so everyone's getting started. They're getting it like in your first bath, right?
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
happening. And then what's going on in the actual winery itself in Scottsdale while all of this drama is happening? What's going on in the winery? Because I know it's getting cooler. People are hanging out. This is like big season starts right now in Scottsdale, right?
Yeah, it starts in September and October. We start getting a little bit busier, which is great. We have a lot of activities planned in September, and we're starting to get the conferences coming to Scottsdale, and then we get some
Okay.
off-site kind of private events associated with them, which is great for us. We do some team
I'm all for
building
it. If you're
kind of
going to do any
events.
team building corporate stuff, you better put it in a winery for me.
Yes, exactly. So I'm getting a lot of those booked, which is fun, and I do a lot of
Awesome.
that. And yeah, so it's starting to pick up. The
Oh, holiday
festivals start.
season. Holiday
Yeah.
season. Would you say people need to really get on with it now if they're going to book something at the winery? Because, you
I
know,
would start thinking about it. I mean, I actually have some bookings after the first of the year even. So
oh,
people
wow.
start thinking about things like that very early, and they
Mm.
book up very quickly. So yeah, we'd love to host some events, though our space
Holiday
is
parties.
small, but we'd love to host some holiday parties. Absolutely.
And do you
Yeah,
have still have events going on, tasting events, painting events, corking
of
event? You have
course,
all kinds of
of
cool stuff
course,
going.
we do. We have a lot of them. We have the wine talks with Kurt and library
Cool.
tasting coming up, and
Cool.
yep, that painting we've been doing.
Oh, I love
I've
that.
teamed with another artist who does these incredible collages, and so
Ooh.
um, close to Thanksgiving, we're doing one about being thankful. And she's going to be helping people produce these incredible collages. They're gorgeous. And so that's a fun event that we're doing. So yeah,
Oh,
we
nice.
try a little bit of everything,
I
you
love
know.
that. So again, everyone, ldvwinery.com is a website to go for all the events. Sign up for the newsletter, follow on social media and the podcast too. every
Yeah,
first Wednesday, because if we're gonna start the month off with wine, why not? Why not? That's always it, right?
yeah.
Before we get into the spice and talk about spicy foods, Mexican foods, it's Hispanic Heritage Month is September, so this is perfect timing. You have your word of the month, and this one's got me. Lees,
Okay, lees.
Lees.
Yes,
Okay,
lees. Lees are, that's this refers to the sediment that consists of like the dead yeast and the cells, yeast cells, the grape pulp,
the bitsies that
grape
I always talk about, the
seeds.
bitsies.
Yeah, the other great matter that accumulates during fermentation and
Oh,
kind of rises to the top. And I think I've talked about punching down. I think
hmm
that was a term in the past. So when you begin fermentation, all of that matter that didn't come off during, you know, the stemming process, but the dead yeast, as the fermentation goes on, will float to the top, the seeds and everything else, and it'll harden somewhat on the top of the grape juice. And sometimes winemakers will rack off the wine. I know that's a term that we've used in the past, racking, to get rid of that lees.
so
And
it's like a
some,
crust.
yeah, it's like a crust of all
Hmm.
that grape matter that accumulates during fermentation. We typically at LDV rack off about 3 to 4 days after fermentation ends. So once fermentation ends, we want to get the juice, the wine juice, off the lees, it's called. So we want to get rid of that, all of that matter that might have continued before we put it into tanks or barrels to then rest and start the
What happens
process of
to that?
aging.
Does that go
We,
back in as compost or?
yeah, we compost it. Yep,
Wow,
yep. Just like we
wow.
compost all of when we the stem and they take all the leaves and the stems and everything, we compost all of that too. So
Wow.
yeah, leaves.
Sustainability, y'all. It's all
Yeah,
happening. I get to say y'all. I'm in New Orleans today
there
as
you
we
go.
record this. I can
Yeah.
say that. So I'm going to call you Miss Peggy now too. Now
Okay.
that
Yes.
I'm going to call
Yeah.
you Miss Peggy. But this I find this fascinating. I get all into the science of running this, and it's amazing when you think about how you plant and then harvest, as we've talked about. Now you're playing with the leaves, taking the juice
Yeah.
out and composting. I mean, this is quite a cycle and a lot of work. And then running the actual winery itself, a tasting room. You guys, you need some
Crazy.
wine. I'm just telling you, you
You
do need
got to
some
be
wine.
a little bit crazy to be in this business.
I think that's why we like you all. Plus,
Yeah.
you make some really good wine. So, really good wine. Um, Spicy food, Mexican food. You've got a great recipe, everyone. If you look in the episode notes, we have one of Peggy's awesome recipes. This one is for Southwestern pesto shrimp. So, well, this guy's, because Mexico has some amazing seafood, right? They're known for it,
Right.
pescado and
Right. Right.
so yeah, so Jalisco, isn't this Jalisco then, wouldn't it be? I think,
Right.
as I
Right.
recall. But tell everyone about this recipe.
Well,
Looks easy.
it is very easy. When you think about Mexican food, it's so Americanized. It's very American Mexican food is very cheese laden and you
Sour
know
cream gets on there, which I don't know
yeah,
where that
loads of
came
sour
from.
cream
They don't do
and
that in
they
Mexico that I saw.
no, but there's beautiful Mexican food that is seafood based and just the layers of chilies and spice and so on that the moles and are just
Mm.
incredible and pair beautifully with wine. And usually, at least in this country, the go-to for pairing with Mexican food is beer or margaritas. But I want you to think about wine when you're pairing with Mexican food. But the Southwestern pesto shrimp, it's just making a pesto. I'm putting a Southwestern spin on it instead of making it with basil, which is an Italian pesto. This is made with cilantro. And
Ooh, that's
cilantro,
refreshing.
Yeah, cilantro, garlic. I do use Parmesan cheese, or you can use a cojito, which is
Mm.
a bit of Mexican cheese, would be great in it too. And jalapeno, of course. You know, you want to have that spice. And instead of typically using, I'm drawing a blank on what you put in pesto. I
The
use
oil.
actual almonds. I was thinking of the
Mm.
nut
Oh,
that
the
you
pine nut.
pine nuts. There we go, the pinion nuts. I use almonds in this pesto, so it gives it a little bit richer flavor. And then with olive oil, and you just mix it all up, a little salt in there, and you get this beautiful pesto that then you marinate the shrimp. And you want to get, I think the recipe I call for R15, which is a little bit bigger shrimp. And then you marinate the shrimp for at least an hour in that pesto to let the flavors really get into the shrimp. And I suggest putting it on a rack and cook, or not on a rack, but in a cookie sheet for 350 and cooking it for about 10 to 15 minutes in the oven. So it's
Okay.
just a wonderful shrimp dish. You can serve it cold or warm as an appetizer or as your part of your main
Mm.
course, maybe with some rice or something with it, and pair it with a beautiful Sauvignon Blanc or an Alberini. Um,
What would you do
or
with one of your wines?
I would go with our vignette, the one
Yeah.
that's more the Sky Island vignette, or you could do with our Sky Island Grenache would be beautiful. I think with this
Well,
dish.
we're still needing to come back and taste the Viognier. We've got to,
Yes,
we feel we're part of the birthing process, a teeny speck in it,
you
but
are.
it's exciting. But when you're talking about R15, when I saw the recipe, I was like, is that rands? I mean, I come from South Africa, so an R is rand. So I'm looking like, whoa,
Oh,
it's only $15. Um, what's $15 anymore? But what is the R? I'm sorry,
it
everyone, I'm
tells
allergic
you.
to
Yeah,
seafood,
yeah.
so I have no clue. So maybe someone else is like me who just doesn't know. So what does the R stand for?
It gives you, it usually tells you about how many shrimp per pound. So an
Oh,
R
okay.
15 means there's 15 to 20 shrimp per pound. So it gives
Oh,
you
okay.
an idea based on the size of the shrimp, how many are in a pound of it.
I just
So
didn't know if it was a grade or not, like
I
the
don't
jewel
know what
dates.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it stands for. That's how I interpret when I see an R15 to
Okay.
20, that means there's
Sounds like
15
a
to
car
20.
now. Now I'm all
I
like, it's
know,
an
right?
R15, baby. Rev that motor. Yeah, I like it. I
Yeah.
like it. But going back to Mexican food and wine,
Yes.
oh, our friends over in Asheville at the Lion and Rose Bed and Breakfast. I think you
Right.
did a sausage day with them. Now, sausage
Yep.
chorizo, right? That's the thing.
Right.
Now, we went there recently and he's like, hey, you guys want some burritos? And I'm like, dude, bring the Mexican food.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but like the more east you go, it's just not the same. It's just
Right.
different. I can tell you, he made the best burritos I've had since,
Oh,
being the Southwest. Like, I mean, I couldn't, he did steak, he chopped it up and he put like cajito, that cheese, which is nice and crumbly and different. It's just
right.
different. It's really
Right.
good.
Yep.
And rice and avocado. And I'm like, yeah, bring it all. And I'm going, yeah, yeah, it's going to be, a burrito from the East. So I forgot he's from Southern California. And oh my gosh, I went, we hang out with our dogs. I almost did the dog zoomy around the bed and breakfast, which
Oh,
wouldn't
I
have been
love it.
popular. It would have been funny, but it was so good. And he was talking about how the seasoning, it is about the seasoning and the spice.
Right.
And he does something to the meat with citrus to break down the meat. I don't know quite what he was doing, but he did some kind of Goya sauce or something to bring the meat to this place of
Okay.
like, oh my God, I'm in Mexico. I can't even, I'm so excited. And I'm so excited about this topic because I love spice. But with the
Right.
wine, I wasn't drinking wine at that moment. And I really wish I was because I wanted to know what to pair with like a steak burrito that had that. I just can't even tell you what the flavor is. Just, it was so Mexico and so perfect. I wanted
I
mine.
I would have probably paired it with a Syrah or,
Oh,
the Grenache would have been nice with that. It sounds like, even maybe, one of our lighter petite sirahs
Hmm.
might have gone well with it. But the beauty of, I think, true Mexican food, and it sounds
Mm,
like he did a nice burrito, is that layer of flavors that keep you guessing. And I think a mole is the perfect example of that, because when you taste some moles that are done properly, it
mm.
has,
Oh,
you know, a bit of, it just blows my mind,
it
basically.
does. I'm going to do zoomies right now. I'm going to be a
Yeah.
puppy.
Because they're made with almonds and some kind of
Hmm.
nuts. And then you have the variety of chili peppers, gajito and ancho and jalapeno. And then there's usually some cocoa bean
Mm.
in it, some black, of course, black pepper. And then they throw in cinnamon and cumin and just that blending of all of
Why are
those.
you doing this to me?
I mean, I haven't had moly in a
I'm
long
like, I'm
time.
ready to smoke a cigarette right now. I'm like, well, I'm just saying, but there's a small, we used to live in Baja, right? And just
Yeah.
south of Ensenada. And in
Mhm.
Ensenada, it's the pollo place is what we call it. And there's this chicken spot,
Right.
right? And they wood fire the chicken and then
Mm,
they make moles. And there's this one day we went with our friend, the El Commodore, and he's passed, but since, but he knew it. Every time we went to Ensenada, he's like, we go, and every time I want this mole again, and it's never
yeah.
happened again. The same mole. This mole was so outstanding. But you got to think, when you're talking about Mexican food and wine, we're right outside the Guadalupe Valley, and the
Right.
Guadalupe Valley at that time was just kind of starting up and doing
Right.
good, but now it's like really, booming.
Right.
But we had white wine that, and I wish I knew. I was too young and dumb, but that we had a white wine that went with this chicken and mole dish. And I don't think I'll ever experience it again. And it's like when you love a bottle of wine and then the harvest is over and the
Right.
wine is gone. You
Right.
cry, but you had that moment. So
Yes.
that mole and that wine and everything, that was probably one of those moments you have in your life when you start to actually taste what you're eating.
Right.
I can't
Right.
explain it. It wasn't just like a favorite food as a kid or something like that. This was when I went, oh, I feel like an adult now. That
Yep.
was an
Yep.
adult moment, one of my first real adult moments.
I love it. I love it.
So
That's
yeah,
the beauty, I think, about wine, and the beauty about food is that it can create those memories that will linger for years and years and years. And you probably know, well, you know exactly who you were with, that you can recall the conversation you were
I
having.
know exactly where
Yeah,
I was sitting in the restaurant, exactly who was
right.
doing. Yep,
Yeah, and
did and
that you can
oh,
taste the flavors when you start remembering that. And a wine can do that for you, a great wine, and so can a great meal.
but
And
they paired this, and I didn't think a white wine would go with a mole because it was really dark, but it was light, and that's what
yeah,
I didn't understand is how they got it to be, you know, light as a mole because
and
normally
I
you think of thick, and it wasn't.
right, and I would say probably it was a fruit forward white wine, so
Mm-hmm.
it to be able to stand up to all the variety of spices in it. So yeah, I could possibly see it. I think I would lean more towards Zinfandel or Barbera or Petite Sirah with a really thick
Mm.
spice laden mole. But yeah, if it has that fruit forward to pair with the spices, I think it would be beautiful.
I just thought it
Um,
was the best day ever.
that's
It was. That was
awesome.
an awesome thing. But this is the thing about pairing. Try it, right? So as we talk
Right.
about this, about these different dishes, and you talked about moles, quesadillas. Now that's got to be really interesting about because it's about what we put in the quesadilla, but you've got cheese. So is
Absolutely.
it the protein, or I count cheese as a protein, and a main ingredient on anything ever? Cheese must be with it. Do
Right.
you go by the cheese or do you go by the protein or the main spice
Well,
in it?
it's all about the balance. So it really does depend on what you're putting in it. So are you doing a green salsa or are you doing a red salsa? Are you adding guacamole or you're not? What are all the condiments that are going to go with that quesadilla? I think come into play. Are you doing white cheese or yellow cheese in it? So that will help you determine. But because of the cheese and because of, some of those standard kind of toppings, you want to balance the acids. So, you need a high acid to cut through cheeses, typically. And so a Sauvignon Blanc or a super dry Riesling or Chenin Blanc might really go well. But then if you add meat to that quesadilla in some way, chorizo or beef like you had in your burrito, you might want to go to a red. So, starting at the medium bodied reds like a Grenache or Pinot Noir all the way up to a Petit Syrah, depending on.
So it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily go with the spice. It's
Not
still
as
going.
much. I think it's a combination of things. The cheese plays a major role. The other protein you might put in there plays another role. And then the condiments, because that's where you don't want the condiments, because they have more acid they're bringing to the table. You don't want that conflicting with the wine that you're pairing it with. But
Okay. Yeah. So when you, so like chicken would be kind of almost on the balance of the cheese in a way. So that,
yeah,
and fish, what happens when you do fish tacos and things?
that makes it lighter. And again, it depends on how is it just plain chicken? I mean, we never have just plain chicken. It's always tossed with, our spice mix, chili and
Hey, listen, I just
paprika.
did breakfast with it. I went, oh, look at this grill seasoning. Oopsie.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
my tongue is
Yep.
still not normal, but it's okay. But
Yeah.
yeah, you add that spice. Yeah.
So when you add those spices, that'll also dictate how, what you pair things with. But yeah,
Mm.
so, lighter with the seafood ceviche that I have on my list. You don't want anything to compete with the beautiful fish that you might be using or seafood you might be using in that ceviche. So you want
Mm.
something that pairs with those really clean flavors of seafood and the lime and the
So
cilantro and
that comes with its own acid, like literally.
right,
Ceviche is
right.
like cooked in acid. Not that sounds terrible.
Well, yeah, that's how
But it is. But that's what
yeah,
the citrus does. Is it is
yeah,
like the marinade. It is like the
correct.
cooking oil, but it's no cook. It's fresh and raw, but it's
Right,
cooked
right.
by
So you
citrus.
want something crisp, like a Sauvignon Blanc or
Mm,
an Albarino, a kind of wine to go with that, and it'd be
mm.
beautiful. Um,
Wow, this is fascinating to me because there's so much you can do with Mexican food, and it depends on the regionality of Mexican food, or then are
right,
we trying to do Mexican food and then Americanizing it? And, you
right.
know, that's when, I always, I didn't see much yellow cheese in Mexico that I
No,
recall.
no,
Um,
there's not a lot.
unless they made a hamburger that was American, and even then, just go
Right.
for their sopes. It's so much better. But chilaquiles, what would you do like for? Because chilaquiles, honestly, is like one of my favorite dishes in the world for breakfast. Like just, and I know because I'll eat it. I don't care when I drink wine, what time, honestly. But what would you do with that? Because it's the salsa being, is it the red? Is it the green?
Salsa
Are you
verde,
doing with
yeah.
eggs with it?
Right,
What would you
right.
look? I would definitely look at a white wine, even if it's
Yeah,
eggs, right? Like a,
right. And yeah, I would say something again, crisp, bright kind of wine, like a Sauvignon Blanc, or a Viognier would be beautiful with
mm,
that. But you might also try a sparkling with it. It might be
okay,
nice. Not a
sure.
sweet, a dry sparkling might be fun with that also. So try that,
Oh,
and tacos. And I hope
mm.
people are having fun making different kinds of tacos
Taco bars
instead.
for parties. And we're getting to the holiday
Correct.
season. That is one
Fun.
of the best things to do is have a taco bar because people put on it what they want and then people are
Right.
happier, right?
Right. And so have fun with the variety of tacos, the variety of the shell that you put them in, from soft tacos, street tacos to the hard shell. Um, Make your own. Don't not so much the tortilla, but make your own shells. Don't buy those already packaged taco
Once they're
shells.
broken by the time you get home anyways,
Right.
if you
Yes.
drive like me.
Buy a corn tortilla and make your own shell. It just is so much better, and
Mm.
try with some spicy chicken. Anything left over becomes taco night for us. So if we bought, a Costco roasted chicken and had it one night, and then the next night it becomes tacos,
With
or,
guacamole. Mm.
yeah, yeah, it's just,
Why are you
awesome.
doing this to me? This is so cruel. I'm dying. I am literally dying. You're talking about one of my favorite, blends of food, but Hispanic food is interesting because of the beans and
Right.
sometimes the fruit that comes into play. And we talked about fruit the other month. Fruit can come
Absolutely.
in like you've got Hispanic flavors like Cuban. If it's
Yeah.
Cuban, it could be like a friend of mine makes this amazing Cuban, like it's beans, black beans, red onions, and then she puts in sweet potato and she'll put it on yellow
Mm,
rice. And I'm like,
yeah.
and oh, dude,
Yep.
seriously. And it's so
Yep.
healthy. It's healthy. It's vegetarian, and if you got
Yep.
it without lard,
Right.
but
Right. Right. Right.
and you can put bacon on it too. Just saying, or
Yeah.
ham. Just saying, you can do it.
In honor of Mexican Heritage Month, also, what is so exciting is Arizona and Mexico, our wine regions kind of mirror each other a lot.
Mm,
Um, there are 14 different wine regions in Mexico. And over the last decade in Mexico, they grew from 50 vineyards to well over 150 today. And that's almost exactly like Arizona, the growth in
really?
the Arizona wine region, very similar. And where the grapes are grown in Mexico are also similar to Arizona. They're grown in the mountainous regions. And they have, they're growing, I think it was like 40 different varieties. And we're also growing quite a few varieties here in Arizona. And the type that are flourishing are similar, Grenache, Sauvignon Blanc. They're
The white
doing
wines
Riesling
too.
and Merlot, Cabernet, and Petit Syrah also. So it's our regions are the wine industry is similar to Mexico in
Yeah,
Arizona.
when we
Yeah,
lived there and Riesling was there, I thought, oh, because in the Guadalupe Valley, as I recall, I
right.
mean, we're talking about years ago, right? I mean, a few decades, because we're all younger now. Um, there were wineries owned by Russian families and a
Huh.
lot of German. And so it's also interesting as you go into Texas because of the wines that, we look at
Sure.
Mexico, how it borders California, Arizona, and Texas, right?
Yeah.
So the Riesling we did have, and now I'm thinking that's probably what I was drinking that night with the mole. Um, and I always went, oh, because we have German wineries here, they're just going to make Riesling. Again,
Right.
I was young and naive at this point about wine. I just enjoyed it. I had no clue what I was doing, but
Right.
all I knew is like when something really stands out to you, it stands out, and you do have that memory stamp, and that's amazing to me and exciting. And
Yeah.
that really did it for me that day. I was like, wow, okay, this is something to take note of for some reason. And but I didn't understand the Riesling is because of the region, because I'm just, you know what I mean? I just didn't think that's
Oh,
didn't. I mean, we had orange wine in South Africa, orange
oh,
blossom wine,
interesting. Yeah, you can
and
ferment any fruit, just about, and make wine out of it.
that was a big deal over there. And
Wow.
we didn't have that much of it, but it was really good white wine. And then find white wines here were a little scary when we first moved here and a little different. And you guys have good wine. I mean, I have to
Yeah.
say, you guys have extremely good white wines, but the industry itself, I think, is producing better white wines than it has in the
Right.
last 10, 15 years. I think it's
Yeah.
elevated. Has that been something to watch as a winemaker about the white wines of
I think
What
so.
is it? What is it being different than the reds? I don't get it.
It's finding the balance, it goes to, I think, kind of full circle in this
Mm,
conversation, goes back to where the grapes are grown and the
mm,
type of soils, and getting the pH, the acidity, balanced in white wines, which is
mm,
very important, and getting the alcohol level at the uh,
mm,
right, amount. So yeah, they're a little bit trickier. But I think, yes, they're improving tremendously in this country, and there's great white wines from different regions that taste very different. Our Viognier in Arizona tastes very different than upstate New York's or Pennsylvania Viognier. So, and it's again because of our place. So
mm, mm.
it's exciting.
That's exciting because when you travel, you want to taste, oh, I love Viognier, and then you'll go somewhere else and it's like, well, that's not Viognier. And yes, it is. And that's the tasting journey that we get to do as travelers or even at your home, getting wine in. And that was one of the questions before we go. When can people start ordering again? Because like, come on, Peggy, I'm tired of doing these conversations without wine.
Yeah, October. October
It's
probably
coming.
will be the time. And so we'll have some new wines on the market. So definitely get on the website and order. We do, um, yeah, we'll have some fun things coming out. I do want to tell our listeners to get out of your wine box and try
Yeah,
a
don't do the
Grenache.
wine box.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, but in September, try a Grenache from the States, a United States Grenache, and then try a Grenache or try a Grenache from France or something. Try them side by side and think about the difference of the places that influence those wines.
Yeah,
I
and
think
that
it'd be
means
a
you're not doing
fun,
it from the box for sure.
yeah, yeah, it's a fun way to experience Grenache. And like I said earlier, it's a great food friendly wine. So
Grenache is
try
like the
that.
perfect
It
for
is.
September.
Yeah,
And for
it's a
Hispanic
perfect
Heritage
wine,
Month, I think that we're also looking at, Arizona and California wines and Mexico and wine in America came from the Spaniards coming over.
right?
The
Right.
missions came through and
Emissions.
the missions, they needed wine because that's part of their lifestyle. We applaud.
Yeah,
So they brought that
yeah.
over. And so that's part of the history in the Southwest too. So check that out. So thank you as always, Peggy. So much fun. Everyone, ldvwinery.com. Watch for October. It's coming. It's coming. But if you go to Arizona, you must go to Scottsdale and go see Peggy and the staff at LDV Winery's tasting room. Maybe go to an event or just go have a tasting, have fun, and enjoy. Thank you so much, Peggy.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's Wine Time with Peggy show. Keep up with LDV Winery at ldvwinery.com. Keep up with Big Blend Radio at bigblendradio.com.